This tail could shatter bone with a single swing. Forget claws and teeth. One of the most powerful weapons in dinosaur history wasn't used to hunt. This is the Ankylosaur tail club, nature's warhammer. Today, we're diving into the anatomy, evolution, and raw power behind one of Mother Nature's most brutal inventions, and the most famous of them all, the one that turned this tail into an icon, the Ankylosaurus. Ankylosaurus was never built for speed or stealth. Instead, this dinosaur lumbered slowly through the late Cretaceous in an environment that was dominated by massive apex predators like Tyrannosaurus rex, Albertosaurus, and other giant theropods. Its eyesight was likely average at best, and its brain was hardly impressive. It was a slow herbivore with no camouflage. On paper, Ankylosaurus didn't have much going for it, but still it emerged as one of the most successful and dangerous herbivores ever known. What it lacked in speed and brains, it more than made up for in other unique ways. Ankylosaurus is widely considered to be the most heavily armoured animal of all time, covered head to tail in massive bony plates and sharp spikes. At nearly 8 meters long, weighing around 8 tons, it was basically a living tank. Yet, its armour and size was not the most intimidating part of this animal. Ankylosaurus had evolved a far more direct solution to survival: its tail club. At the end of its heavily armoured body was its tail club, formed from huge osteoderms fused into an oval-shaped knob. In other words, a huge and incredibly dense bit of bone at the end of its tail. To work efficiently, it required a highly specialised anatomy. Unlike flexible whiptails like Diplodocids or the Stegosaurus thagomizer, Ankylosaurus had a rigid handle built from tightly fused vertebrae and thick ossified tendons. This structure allowed it to swing its club at full force without injuring itself. Paleontologist Victoria Arbour, who has extensively studied Ankylosaur anatomy, explains that without a reinforced structure, a powerful tail swing could tear muscles or dislocate bones. But Ankylosaurus didn't have that problem. Its tail was a perfectly engineered weapon, capable of shattering bone or crippling even the largest predators with a single, well-placed strike. Fossils provide direct evidence of these creatures actually using these weapons in combat and just how effective this tail was. Ankylosaurs like Zool show healed injuries consistent with tail club strikes, but these were not from predators, but from other ankylosaurs. This suggests that Ankylosaurus didn't only swing its tail to defend against carnivores, but also used in brutal contests of dominance, similar to modern giraffes clashing necks or rams locking horns. And Ankylosaurus didn't evolve this devastating club overnight. It took millions of years. If we rewind the clock nearly 130 million years to what is now Western North America, we find one of the earliest known ankylosaur ancestors, Gastonia. It had a long, flexible tail lined with sharp spikes, useful for fending off smaller predators, though it lacked the sheer force seen in its later relatives. Fast forward to around 90 million years ago, and a crucial change began to take shape. Dinosaurs like Gobisaurus, found in what is now Mongolia and China, evolved stiffer tails reinforced by fused vertebrae and bony tendons. They still didn't have the iconic tail club seen in Ankylosaurus, but the added rigidity turned their tails from flexible whips into solid rods capable of delivering powerful blows even without a club. Fast forward another 15 million years and we see another evolutionary change in the species, when ankylosaurs like Panachosaurus developed heavy, bony knobs at their tail ends. These dense, fused osteoderms formed the first true tail clubs, capable of delivering truly powerful strikes. Interestingly though, not all armoured dinosaurs went this route. Close relatives called Nodosaurids relied instead on spikes and flexible tails, more similar to Stegosaurus thagomizer rather than a tail club. But perhaps the most unusual version of this weapon came from an armoured dinosaur called Stegosaurus. It evolved a blade-like tail entirely on its own, a sword-like structure completely different from the clubs seen in Ankylosaurus. This strange evolutionary path proves that Ankylosaurus' tail club wasn't some random accident. Similar tail weapons appeared in multiple species at different times all over the world, each with its own unique adaptations. But just how powerful was this club? Modern science has finally begun to answer that question, with 3D scans and digital modelling from the newest found fossils. Large adult ankylosaurs could swing their tail clubs in a wide 100-degree arc. The power came from thick muscles anchored to a stiff handle made of fused vertebrae and hardened tendons. This setup didn't just add stability, it was built for impact. This impact could easily cause significant damage and even break bones of a larger predator. That isn't just guesswork. Studies have actually been done to calculate the potential damage these animals could cause. According to biomechanical studies, the tip of the tail could reach speeds of up to 60 miles per hour, about 100 kilometers per hour. A full-sized club could hit between 7,300 and 14,400 newtons of force. That's more than enough to shatter bone. In fact, it's strong enough to break the legs or joints of large dinosaurs. So we know Ankylosaurus had the capability to do some serious damage, but did they actually use it? The answer is yes, and the proof is fossilized. One of the clearest examples comes from a close relative of Ankylosaurus, Zoochrovastator, whose name literally means destroyer of shins. Paleontologists discovered a very well-preserved zooskeleton, complete with skin impressions and rows of bony armor plates still in place. But what really caught their attention were the hips. Several of the large spike-like structures along Zool's sides were broken, blunted, and then healed. This tells us two things. One, the injuries were not fatal, and two, they came from something powerful and blunt. The wounds were too precisely placed to be the work of predators. If a T-Rex had taken a bite, we'd see deep punctures and ragged tears. Instead, we see blunt force trauma, exactly where another ankylosaur's tail would have struck in a sideways swing. This strongly suggests that ankylosaurs were using their clubs not just against carnivores, but against each other, likely in combat over territory dominance or mates. This shows these dinosaurs were not just passive tanks trying to survive, but active, social creatures engaged in powerful tail-swinging battles. Earlier we followed how ankylosaurs gradually evolved their iconic tail clubs, but by the late Cretaceous, that journey was complete. The club was no longer an experimental weapon, it was fully formed. What followed wasn't about invention though, it was about variety. Across the Ankylosaur family, evolution began to explore different versions of the same idea. Some species, like Anodontosaurus, developed broad, wedge-shaped clubs with a distinct central prong. Others, like Dilophosaurus, had smaller, narrower clubs, possibly better suited for fast, precise strikes or ritual combat. In Tachia, we see a different approach entirely. A wide, flat club paired with reinforced skull armor, turning the whole body into a weapon. Each tail was shaped by different pressures, from predators, environment, or social behavior. Some were designed to injure, others may have been used just to intimidate. Meanwhile, Nodosaurids took a separate path, dropping the club altogether in favor of spikes and sheer defensive bulk. These weren't primitive stages, they were specialized endpoints, proof that even a single weapon can evolve in multiple directions, each one finely tuned for survival. My name's Joe, thank you so much for watching our video on the tail club. Let us know in the comment section what do you think of the Ankylosaur tail club weapon, and check out another video on screen we think you would absolutely love.